Hello everybody, I'm Brookie and I make tutorials. Today, it's custom fonts. How do you make a custom font from scratch? Before I get into the guide, I need to make sure that you actually want to make a font. Making a font is a lot of work, so if you haven't heard about Google Fonts or this Fontspace website, then you should probably look into them because a lot of the fonts that have already been made might actually be good enough for what you want to do. I'll show you the websites real quick. This first one is called Google Fonts. You can filter by the different types to see different types of fonts in each category. And there are many other filters as well. So you can find fonts a lot easier and with a lot more specificity than you could just looking through the bar on the top. And this is Fontspace, where you can find different categories and different tags, and you can find many, many fonts here as well. If you decide, okay, I don't actually have to make my own font, and you decide to use one of these tools or something else, make sure you are finding the license for the font so that you aren't getting into trouble. But if that's the route you're going, glad that I was able to help. Bye-bye. Okay, so for the rest of the people watching who want to make their own font and they do not care about all the time and effort that it's going to take. One more thing I have to tell you is that I'm not going to show you how to make a standard font. I know that typography people go crazy with all their proportions and their specifications. Everything has to be perfect. They have a million words for every little thing. I'm not going to show you that. I'm going to show you how to make a decorative font. Stuff that is hand-drawn. So, if all of that out the way, you still want to continue with this video, well, I hope it helps you. Okay, now we get to get into it. So, there's going to be three programs that you're going to need. You're going to want a drawing program, a vector program, and a Fontforge. Basically, Fontforge is the only one, so just get that. For the drawing program, all it needs is layers, and the more transform tools, the better, because that will help. For the vector program, you're going to want to get Inkscape. Just full stop, get Inkscape. Inkscape will let you copy and paste straight into Fontforge, so get that one. It's free. And then finally, Fontforge, it's the best one, so go get it. Okay, now that you know all the programs that you need, let's talk about sketching. So you're sketching your font, and I put an example of a font that I found off of Google here, and this one is very goofy and very ridiculous looking on purpose. But the problem that I want to show you, don't try to add too many details into your font unless you're going for that. You want to find, before you start even drawing, where you land between stylized and standard. Let me show you an example of some of the fonts that I made. So these are the fonts that I made, and as you can see, they're stylized, but they have standardization enough so that you can read it. This is where I land on the spectrum, but once again, make sure you know where you are on the spectrum before you start drawing. It helps to find some key features of whatever you want to add into your font. For example, I have this font up the top that's dandelion seeds, and each of these dandelion seeds don't actually look like dandelion seeds, but they got the shape language going. If you get it, you get it. Okay, so let's move on. Okay, so let's get into the program for drawing. So this is Krita that I have open, but any program will do. Three things you really want to be careful about while you're sketching is you want to make sure the heights, the widths, and the thicknesses are all similar enough that the font does not look crazy and weird. So first of all, height. As you can see, as I'm sketching my letters, I will put lines at these four key moments. The capital height, the lowercase height, the baseline, and where the G hangs down, this is the hanging line. Those four lines, you should keep them standard throughout your entire font. So when you're drawing, you should draw the letters side by side like this. Let's talk about widths. When you're making a font, you have to imagine a box around each letter, because these programs do not know how to put letters close together overlapping each other like this. So you want to be careful about that. You should be imagining boxes around your letters, because when you go to put them into Fontforge, that's how they're going to be typed out. So make sure that the widths are good and that letters look good when put together. Also, you don't want your width to be crazy wild different. Finally, thicknesses. You want the thickness of each of your letters to be pretty much the same. You can mostly just eyeball it, but just check it as you go. Okay, last thing I want to tell you about sketching. I like to have a layer for a font, an actual font that's already been made at the top, and then I like to have my lines. I like to take a font and I double click in Krita to open up the font editor, and I find a font in here that is similar in width and height and thickness to the font that I'm making. Once I find it, I save, and then I use that font to position my lines. I can move the lines afterwards once I start drawing, but it is giving me a good baseline for where to start, where to put the lines at the beginning. So this is just how I do it. You can position your lines however you want, but I hope that that tip helps. Here you are looking at one of the files that I used to create one of my fonts by drawing each letter. I want to have some notes for you to take here. So first of all, each letter is on its own layer. Why did I do that? It's because I can use all the transform tools available to me in Krita. I can use liquify, I can use anything I want. So having a letter on each layer really helps with that. The second thing is I have all the letters grouped and I lowered the opacity. This will help me draw to see where the lines are as I'm drawing. Third thing is I added an extra line. I added this extra line because I wanted to have a different height for certain letters. Don't add too many lines because it'll get overcomplicated, but you can add some extra lines too. And finally, as you can see, this file is extremely wide. Things can get a little laggy in certain art programs. Krita does an okay job, but sometimes it gets a little laggy anyway. But just keep that in mind. With all that in mind, let's move on to vectorizing. Okay, now we're in Inkscape. Some things to remember about Inkscape. You're going to want to use the pen tool and change it to sequence of straight lines. Let me show you. Here's the pen tool on the left, and then you change it to this one, sequence of straight lines. This will allow you to draw lines like this, and then you can go in here and edit them. This, by far, is the most easy way to copy your letters into vectors that I have found. It is the fastest, most efficient way. What you're going to do is take the picture that you get from sketching, you're going to put it straight into Inkscape, and then you are going to trace over your lines, make them nice and neat, clean up things, and make each one as a vector. Couple things to know about that. Each letter needs to be one object. So I just drew an object over here. If I draw another one, maybe I need to make a hole in here. These are now two objects. That's no good. You need to make them one object. So you click your two shapes and you go to Path, Difference, or Path Union. And now this is one object, but it has a hole inside. So you can make your lowercase d, your g, your o, things like that will have the holes inside. Okay, so here is one of the files that I use to vectorize all of my letters. As you can see, I have each letter, and they are a lower opacity, and I would just have them overlaid like this, and I would trace each point and adjust things as I went, not being afraid to make little changes here and there. And then when I was done, I would just drag it up like this, and then do the next one. And I did that for all of these letters. Okay, now let's make it into an actual font using Fontforge. First of all, you should have your Inkscape open with all of your letters. Then you open Fontforge. This is what it looks like. It'll ask if you want to open an already existing font. You can just press New here at the bottom. Now you are going to be given all of these different letters and characters that you can add. All you have to do to add it is go into Inkscape, click one of your shapes, and press Ctrl-C. Then go to Fontforge, find the corresponding letter, and press Ctrl-V. It's as easy as that, which is why I recommend Inkscape. To make edits to each letter, you double-click and go inside. Then you can see the letter, and you can move it around and make little edits. I have a problem, and that is this letter is way too small for the box that they have given us. To fix that, let's close out of this and go back to Inkscape. Then we can scroll out and we're going to select every single letter at once. You do not want to select one letter at a time. You want to scale all your letters at the same time because they all have to be relative to each other. So once they're all selected, hold down Control so you don't stretch it, and then click the arrow, and then you can scale it up. You want it to be roughly big enough so that when you copy and paste it into Fontforge, it takes up the entire box. Let's try again and see where we're at. I'm going to Control-C the A, and I'm going to click the A and press Control-V. Now when I go in, the A is in there. It looks like it's a little too big, so I have to scale it down the same exact way as before. And that's much more reasonable. It doesn't have to be perfect, but a little trial and error will go a long way because you only have to do it once for the entire font. Now, the first thing you're going to want to do for each letter is select all the points by clicking and dragging, and then you're going to click this point and drag it down to the baseline. You want all your letters to start at the baseline. Then you got to drag this line on the right to make the smallest box you possibly can so that your letter fits inside the box. This will prevent overlap and it will make the letters all appear right next to each other. Close that out, Control S. You should save after every single letter because you don't want to lose your progress. It's tedious enough as it is. Here is an example of a completed Fontforge file with all of the symbols. There's a couple notes I want to give you. First of all, symbols. Certain symbols will be at different heights. What I like to do is I like to use hyphen as a guideline for where the different symbols will go. If you zoom in and out by holding Control, you can see on the left there are these numbers. What I like to do is I like to have a number for the hyphen, and then I write it down. So for this font file, the hyphen was 250, so that's where it is on the height. Then I use that number to decide where all my other symbols will go. For the double quotation mark, I put it much above 250. I like to write down where I put all my symbols to make sure in relation to each other, they all make sense. Next, I want to talk about letters like G that go below the baseline. I like to have a point on the baseline somewhere in the vector. For this G, the point is right here at the tip. But you can even put a point right in the middle here that doesn't affect anything when you're doing it in Inkscape, just so that it's easy for you to grab all these points, and when you go to line it up, you can easily do that by just clicking and dragging and snapping it right to the baseline. Now let's talk about taking this Fontforge file and exporting it. You go to File, Generate Fonts. Then you save as a true type font, and you find a location to save it. Let's do Spider Legs 2 because I already have one and I don't want to overwrite it. You can generate, and you will get some warnings, and this has to do with all the typography people with their crazy standards and stuff like that. You can ignore these warnings. Just press yes, and press generate. Here in my file system, you can see that the font generated. You can double click it to get a preview, and there it is. You can generate as many times as you want. If you look in your preview and you don't like something, maybe two letters don't fit well together, then you can regenerate, make edits, and do whatever you need to make the font look as good as you want. Once you have your font, all you have to do to install it to your Windows is go to your settings. In your settings, you type font in the top bar. You go to font settings. You can literally just drag and drop your TTF file into here, and it will install it to your Windows for use in Word, Paint, any program in Windows, even Krita and stuff like that, will have these fonts already in there. I hope the tutorial helped you. Please like the video and comment anything you can do to give me some more analytics so that more people see this and are able to make their own fonts. Thank you for watching. Bye-bye.